And so we have one more panel discussion that's going to really build and share the action that companies are actually taking and that government leaders and other parts of society are already undertaking. So there is hope, and I would like to, before I invite the speakers on the stage, we're first going to hear about from the Convention on Biological Diversity. A number of you already mentioned October 2020 in Kunming is the UN Convention on Biological Diversity's COP15. It's a key milestone. It's not the only milestone and outcome for the Super Year for Nature that we will talk about later. But before we enter the new panel, we're going to watch this message from Mr. David Cooper. Thank you. No, we're not.
Excellencies, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. We stand at a challenging time for the fate of humanity and for all species. We humans are rapidly destroying nature. We are destroying our natural infrastructure that supports life on Earth, social and economic development, and human well-being. Degradation continues to be fueled by expansion into natural habitats, overexploitation, climate change, invasive alien species and pollution, unsustainable agricultural, forestry and fishery practices, urban expansion, infrastructure development, and the impacts of extractive industries are all taking a toll. The costs of ecosystem degradation related to our physical and psychological health, food and water security, our resilience to climate change, and other critical priorities are significant. Across the world, these losses hold us back on our path to sustainable development. They also harm many businesses directly, especially in the long term. We've made some progress in the last decade under the current Strategic Plan for Biodiversity 2011 to 2020 to address these drivers. But biodiversity continues to decline in an alarming way. This was clearly shown in the IPBES global assessment, and it indicates that actions taken so far are insufficient. Thus, our current work on the post-2020 Global Biodiversity Framework provides a critical opportunity to agree on bold and impactful policy action, which is commensurate with the biodiversity crisis we are facing, to change our pathway towards sustainability. Engagement and leadership from all stakeholders, and in particular from the business community, will be critical for success. The partnership with the private sector is key to shape pathways to a sustainable future. It's essential that business leaders continue and strengthen their engagement and develop commitments towards meaningful action. If we can reimagine business models and operations and make them fit for our planet, we stand a chance to address the global challenges of climate change and biodiversity decline. There are, in fact, significant business opportunities associated with halting biodiversity decline and achieving sustainable development. According to the report of the Business and Sustainable Development Commission, achieving the Sustainable Development Goals would open up 12 trillion of market opportunities in 4 core economic sectors: food and agriculture, cities, energy and materials, and health and well-being. Many of those opportunities relate to the potential solutions that biodiversity can provide and are needed to address these pressing challenges. Developing nature-based solutions into viable business models and marketable products holds significant promise to contribute to economic innovation and development. Thus, our global economy and individual businesses have much to gain from addressing the climate and biodiversity crises by developing economic and business models that can function in harmony with nature. I am confident that this European Business and Nature Summit will enable us to move ahead with this critical agenda. You will highlight the key role of the private sector, galvanise the momentum needed, and showcase how businesses can fully commit and contribute to implement the Global Biodiversity Framework for the next decade. I wish you a very successful meeting. Thank you very much.
Introduce Mrs. Anne Larigauderie, Executive Secretary of the Intergovernmental Platform on Business and Ecosystem. Yeah, but that's my cue if I get it wrong. The music starts. Yeah, Biodiversity and Ecosystem Services. Mr. Valentín Alfaya, President of the Green Growth Group and Director of Quality and Environment at Ferrovial, and Mrs. Alice Durand-Reville, Director of Corporate and Public Affairs at Danone. Please take the stage. We'll sit down. Maybe these three? I've got mine. Thanks. Yeah. Like what? Is this the new thing? The music, right? We can just sit and meditate for a while. Because the Slido, I like it. I forgot about that. Which type of organization do you represent? This is helpful for people in the room so you know who's here. What, is this a load of good business, is it? All these consultants in the room, look at that. Business, non-financial, financial. All right, so obviously there's a business case. Is it good? Yeah, no, but the first one, being consultancies. Business, all right. But we did want this whole event to be focused on integrating nature in business and business decision-making. And so this is I would like to make this as informal as possible. We're going to get comfortable enough to share personal experiences. So we're going to ignore you, if you don't mind, for a bit. So starting with you, Mrs. Larigauderie. We've already mentioned the IPBES, but you know, anything that you would like to emphasize in particular that's come out that people might not be aware of, and also how is it even relevant and why should business care?
Thank you.
Let's see. Yeah, there we go.
Thank you very much, Eva, and good morning to everyone. Perhaps the first thing that I would really like to point out on a positive note is that biodiversity is really, I believe, finally gaining momentum and about to join climate as the second major environmental topic on the international public agenda. And I think that this is enormous. And the second thing is that it's really nice to see businesses moving in and embracing biodiversity. And of course, there cannot be any sustainable solution without a strong involvement of businesses. And that also is really a positive development. So now, coming to the IPBES global assessment, as you know, it was a major undertaking, 15,000 scientific publications, analyzed indigenous knowledge as well, 500 scientists involved, 3 years of work. And what this report has showed in a nutshell is that nature is being deteriorated at a rate and scale that is really unprecedented in human history. There is a lot of numbers that have been given. Only 3% of the ocean is still considered as wilderness, this enormous amount of land, of ocean, of area. 3/4 of the land is damaged. One number really struck people, I think, around the world is this 1 million species of plants and animals out of an estimated 8 million that are threatened with extinction. The report also identified the direct drivers of biodiversity loss and nature deterioration and ranked them per order of importance, and that also is new. And land use is the main driver on land, and over-exploitation of resources in the ocean. Then we have climate change, pollution, and invasive alien species. What IPBES called the categories of services or contributions to nature were also assessed, and out of 18, 14 have been shown to show a negative trend, and this is where the impact and the relevance to businesses comes in, because this is when we are talking about losing our regulating services, the capacity of ecosystems to provide, to control the climate, to provide clean air, clean water, to control the emergence of diseases. We are seeing emergence of diseases because of disruption in the environment and loss of biodiversity, because of many other developments that affect nature. Our pollination services also, which we know regulate about 500 billion of production of crops, are also being lost. And of course, this is affecting the fundamental way we live on Earth. We are eroding our bases, and that also relates to businesses, of course. And so why should businesses care about this, about the fact that we are losing all of these services? Well, first of all, I would say that businesses use directly or indirectly those services. They rely on these contributions from nature, but also because increasingly, I believe, consumers care about biodiversity just the way we've seen them starting to care about climate. And so they will favor companies that have a policy related to biodiversity. This is happening. It's also because I believe that businesses are important societal actors, responsible societal actors. All of those who are here are, and we hope that many others will follow. And also, and fundamentally, because not embracing biodiversity will lead to business risks, and on the other hand, thinking about how businesses relate to biodiversity would lead to business opportunities, new markets, possibly a competitive advantage starting early. We also know that buying from staff is really important when projects regarding biodiversity are developed by businesses. And then about what to do, I'm sure that this will come up a lot in the questions, and so I will be brief, but perhaps what I should say is that solutions exist. Many are not new. It's really a question of will, a question of deciding to do so, about deployment and about implementation, really. And then businesses that relate to food and agriculture, well, everything that relates to sustainable agriculture, less pesticides, less fertilizers, better taking care of soils, promoting pollinators, all of those go in the right direction. For forestries, there are certifications for people who buy natural resources and wood that are important. We could list many others, perhaps they will come up. Financial instruments are also important. We are starting to see companies that are testing new indicators to see how they are doing in terms of their investments and how they could trigger better investments so as to stop subsidizing negative developments such as deforestation, for example, and being able to monitor this. So many things are happening. Governments have a major role to play in accompanying businesses. That's important. And my final point is that IPBES also has a major role to play in this, and IPBES is going to, governments have requested that IPBES produces a report on the impact and dependencies of businesses on biodiversity and on nature, in particular assessing indicators, because business really want to know how they are doing, what type of indicators exist, and how well they are at actually ultimately affecting biodiversity outcomes. Thank you.
Well, thank you. I think that deserves a round of applause. Thank you, even though we're ignoring the audience, and this is a conversation, but basically, bottom line is, we actually know what to do.
Yeah, exactly.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right, so moving on to you. I need to move my chair. Mr. Alfaya. Alfaya. Is that not correct?
Arabian, right? This is Spanish, right?
It's very good. I like the name. So what is the Green Growth Group and why are companies engaging with you?
Yeah. Well, first of all, thank you very much for inviting me to take part in this so relevant event. Second, the Spanish Green Growth Group. We are nowadays, I'm representing more than 50 companies, including half of the IBEX 35 here in Spain. And just to give you a figure, around 5% of the total workforce of Spain, which is, I think, a great.
I'm sorry, can you just repeat? I didn't quite get it. 5%?
5% of the total workforce of Spain, of the country. So
okay.
we are not just big companies. We are very proud of having on board also SMEs and micro companies too. So our main goal, we are in fact lobbying the governments, the regulatory bodies, and the rest of the industry too, in order to accelerate the green agenda. Because we all think that the green agenda has much more opportunities than risks for the Spanish economy, for our companies, and more broadly for the European economy. So we think we have to accelerate the agenda because this is the only way of taking advantage about the opportunities and reducing the risks. This is our main goal. And our view around the nature and business, because, well, we're talking about business, right? So the point is how to engage much more business across the community of the economic community. And in our view, there was a time for commitments, public commitments. Commitments were really needed, were very positive. There will be still positive public commitments on nature conservation, but are not enough now. I think we have to look and to work much more on the way we could embed the nature and the biodiversity and natural capital in our daily business strategy. This is the key. And this is very easy to say, but very difficult to work out. In our view, and I'd like just to give you 3 ideas, building on what you said earlier. The first point is what are the main challenges for making this possible, for engaging much more by means of their business strategies? In my view, the first point is that, well, I remember just quoting the former shadow minister of the UK years ago. He was here in Madrid with us, and he said, well, we use nature because it's valuable. We all know it. But we abuse nature because it's free. So the first point is how we can make more visible the economic value of biodiversity and natural capital. This is the first point. For this purpose, we need tools. And I'm very happy to see how in the area of environmental accounting, we are progressing very well. But we need also to provide tools for corporations and for business, and particularly for monetizing the environmental impacts on nature and biodiversity, which is at the end to monetize natural capital itself. You know, this is the first point we need. The second point is to transmit and to provide price signals, appropriate price signals in the market. This is the other thing we are really missing. Look, in my view, the human mindset is much more economical than ecological, and much more focused on the short term than in the medium and long term. And so we need to provide appropriate price signals to drive properly the consumer behavior. In that sense, I think we miss, and we think we have to make much more progress on green taxations. But I'd like to point out something here, if you allow me. That when we talk about green taxations, we're not just talking about green taxes. You know, we are much more talking about upgrading and updating in a very deep way the tax framework itself as a whole, involving and basically applying the principle who pollutes pays and who depollutes or decontaminate the nature reduces the costs of taxes. That's our main point. Green taxation, price signals. And last but not least, there is another challenge we have to face, in my opinion, which is to start speaking same or at least very similar language that we are speaking at the level of the boards of directors. When I have to report the environmental impact of Ferrovial in the board of directors, when we have to talk about business, about biodiversity, I have to go many times with a lot of different indicators.
Lots of people don't understand what biodiversity means.
Yet something really challenging. The point is how to make this much more simple and how to use same language that they are using for making decisions. And once again, this is monetization, but not pricing. Monetization, which is not the same.
Which also adds to the confusion of language. One of the things when the Natural Capital Coalition, when we developed the Natural Capital Protocol, which is for companies to measure and value, is that then very quickly you get to that, oh, well, if this is an economic value, how is that not a financial flow? How does that not translate into the actual financial flow and the monetary? So
I don't say this is not risky, you know. I think they have many risks behind monetizing the natural capital. But I think we have to deal with those. At some point it needs to be recognized. At some point we have to work this out.
Absolutely. It needs to be recognized. Thank you for that. I had a quick follow-up, though, is that having heard Mr. Fernandez earlier, I mean, the Spanish government and the message was extremely strong, I found, and bold. And, you know, has it always been like that? Do you feel like the Spanish, companies are in a good position now, that you see the future is bright and orange?
I think we are in the best position, you know, most of all because we are not just willing to invest in natural capital and biodiversity here. Take into account that, please, that natural capital is currently our main economic asset also in Spain, you know. Well, tourism is based on our landscapes. Gastronomy, for example. And, you know, we had football earlier, you know, which was once around 4% of the GDP, Spanish GDP, but we've already sold it to the Chinese and so on. So we just have nature as our main economic assets, and this is the basis of most of our industrial processes. So why not to invest from the perspective of the business strategy much more on natural capital and biodiversity? This is something natural.
Nice one. Tweeting. Thanks. And last over to Alice, chère Alice. You know, in September, I saw your CEO, the CEO of Danone, Emmanuel Faber. Who here has seen Emmanuel Faber live? Put your hand up. Okay, a few people. He was on fire. Quite literally, he was at this climate action summit in New York. He was rocking the place with such impressive and ambitious messages for the world. And you're in his team. You work for Emmanuel. So I wanted to know, you know, Danone is engaged with a number of coalitions. We're very lucky in the Business for Nature coalition that Danone is one of the strategic partners, but also in the One Planet Business and Biodiversity, more agri-focused coalition, and many others. So can you explain a little bit, you know, why is Danone even engaged, and what are you doing? And if you want to add some perspective on, you know, how did things actually happen inside Danone for this to suddenly be such a visible agenda item?
All of this, I will try. Just you stop me because you know how talkative I am.
It's okay.
So just wave when I...
Can you please leave my mic on, because I keep on trying to interrupt and you're being too polite.
Yeah, so when you get bored, you just wave like this and I will stop. And then eventually I will look at you also, because we're in an intimate conversation. First of all, I really wanted to thank you, Eva, to have invited us and invited me, because what I heard since this morning is really giving me a lot of hope, because we are addressing the right questions and we are talking about solutions. I totally agree with the previous speaker when he says the issues and the challenge are beyond CSR. They must become in companies mainstream. We will have to involve our value chains, our supply chains, to tackle this challenge. And this is for sure something that we totally approve in Danone and other companies I will talk about in a minute. And also subsidies and taxes, I would say subsidies are absolutely critical. All the financial that will support this transformative journey are absolutely critical. And of course metrics and aligned metrics are important. Now, why Danone? Our profound conviction is that the food system is broken and really broken, and that there will be no way we can feed 9 billion people in this planet if we go on the way we're going. This is why we moved, because us alone, we won't do it. I mean, it's just not possible. We have to come all together and go into coalitions and create coalitions in order to find the solutions, to assess them, to find the best ones, and of course, leverage them and scale them up to reach the right important impact that we need. So the food system is broken also because for years, we have been investing in investments that are focused in efficiency and productivity, in super specialized crops, super specialized agriculture system, and we did right. And we managed to feed the planet to meet the growing population needs and bring accessible and, as far as we can, affordable food to as many people as possible. And this must be acknowledged. We must also pay our duties to the farmers and to all the movement that have been done up to now, because this is really what the real issue was. But doing so, we really engage a transformation that now is harming the planet. And I think IPBES is saying it, everybody knows it. Of course, the soil is degrading, biodiversity is degrading, and agriculture and food system has quite a responsibility in it. Today, our food, 70% of our food is relying on 4 crops and 7 species. I think I've got the numbers right, but this is very worrying. What happened to the 60,000 species that are existing worldwide? How are we going to maintain them, conserve them, make them thrive? This is the real question. But agriculture cannot be accused. Agriculture has a lot of the solutions. They can be very active contributor to this transformative journey. And this is also why Danone is so upfront, because we know that the farmers, that agriculture have a lot of those solutions. That this is why we have launched in New York, and Emmanuel did it, but we have also to pay the credits to all the other 18 companies that have joined and are active in this. We have launched agriculture-centric coalition, which is business-centric coalition, which is named as a wonderful acronym, OP2B. I hope you will learn more and keep it in mind, even if it's really not the best one. So what OP2B stands for, One Planet Business for Biodiversity. So OP2B gathers 19 companies together. They are big companies worldwide, and 17 are from food companies, and 2 are from garment and also personal care, because those are companies where their business models are based on agriculture and nature. We have gathered together in order to work on 3 major levers that we have identified as bringing the biggest change in the journey. The first is scaling up regenerative agriculture. It's so easy to say.
Yeah. It's also quite hard to understand sometimes.
Okay,
regenerative agriculture.
Okay, so regenerative agriculture is a set of practices that are based on soil health, that are nurturing soil health and using the plant and the nature of the power of nature to regenerate soil. The main focus of regenerative agriculture is this name of regeneration. So it means that we're going beyond sparing things, we regenerate. And this is a very important tool. And all those companies have committed to really use their value chain, their supply chain, to scale up those practices. Second, the portfolios. We are consumer good companies. We have the contact with consumers. How can we think about our portfolio in a different way? How can we broaden the ingredients that we accept in our food supply chains? How can we make them more local? How can we also give a pull to those biodiversity? And to show that we are working as a coalition, I will just state an example of Unilever that has brought up this report on the future 50 foods, that they have identified 50 foods that are critical for biodiversity. This is something that we can work on pre-competitive basis, which is quite an effort. But on pre-competitive basis, we think that the stake is so high that it mustn't be competitive anymore. It must be pre-competitive. And then the third is deforestation and also restoration of high-value ecosystems. How can we restore soil? How can we restore the nature that has been degraded? Of course, stopping the deforestation as one. I mean, it's a prerequisite, but then when it's done, how can we do it? So those are the main levers, the main work areas that we are focusing on. Just two dates and 2 meetings in order to push us and also to support us. By June 2020, we will be able to disclose a framework of action that will be the most impactful action that we can do. And by October 2020, we will be able to disclose individual commitments for individual companies at individual level. Just one word, because I have just to speak about business for nature. Just agriculture and value chain approach are important, because this is the way to really find the technical and practical solutions and bring alignment also inside. But then we need cross-sectorial cooperation. We need places where we can talk with others, build solutions together, build with finance, build with NGOs, build with policymakers, and this is why we also entered Business for Nature, because we need to be bigger than us, bigger than our value chain. We need to come together. Thank you.
Thanks so much. All right, everyone. So we're going to be opening up for about 15 minutes of Q&A. You can type questions in on Slido. I'd welcome the panelists to ask questions to each other as well if they like. Very happy to do that. But so just to clarify, June 2020, another major milestone and outcome in the 2020 super year. It's the World Conservation Congress taking place in Marseille in France. This is organized by IUCN, the world's largest conservation network, and it's the place to be. Sometime during that event will be a CEO summit. So we'll look forward to continuing to beat that drum from business to policymakers as well. So I'm going to see if there are any hands up and anyone on Slido with questions for the panelists or comments. Happy to have that in any way. Yes, so I'm going to do something to wake you guys up. I've got this. This is our planet, which we love dearly. So I'm going to throw it to you so that the person with the mic knows who to come to. Are you ready? Are you going to take care of it? We only have one, and I'm not very good at throwing. There we go. Okay, you look after it. And a mic, please, for this lady over here.
Thank you very much to everyone. It was extremely interesting.
Can you try the mic, please? Thank you. Yeah, all good.
Thank you very much. It was extremely interesting, all of the speakers. I have a question for Mr. Alfaya. You said you represent 50 companies, and you did mention tourism and gastronomy. The 50 companies that you're representing, what other, can you be a bit more specific on like what type of companies these are, so we get a sense of which businesses are in the lead, interested in promoting business and biodiversity?
Well, looking at the bigger corporations, we have the 4 main utilities in Spain, the 4 banks, which is great, too, infrastructure companies, transport, consultant companies, including both the biggest and SMEs. For example, we are very proud of having EcoAXA on board in our team as one of the most proactive partners. We have food and beverage also, insurance sector. So virtually all sectors excepting those, if you want, more on the side of the very intensive, carbon-intensive economy. You know, this is something not our statements and our positions are sometimes not very compatible with this sector of the economy. But for the rest of them, all of them are fortunately on board.
All right, thanks. We're going to do quick questions, quick answers. We don't have very long. Marta, and then we're going to get anyone else. We have some on Slido. Go.
Thank you, everyone, for the inspiring presentations. The question is also for Valentín. So the first of your points is that the businesses need a kind of framework or tool to measure and value the impacts. So I know that you are familiar with the Natural Capital Protocol. Probably you're our best ambassador in Spain. So are you discussing with the group about applying the Natural Capital Protocol, and yes, which is the progress on that?
Thanks. And before you answer, who's next in the room? We've got a bit over there. Throw it over there, please. The planet goes over to that gentleman in the back there, please. Oscar. Your name's Oscar, isn't it? There. Are you Oscar?
Yes, I am.
You are. Okay, but please, is it also for Mr. Alfaya? Because we're going to distribute. Okay, so one more question and then for someone else. Go.
All right. So I was very happy to hear that there was an interest from business on green taxation. So cheers for that. My question is, what are leading Spanish businesses pledging to the action agenda?
All right. Raise the bar.
Well, may I?
Please, please. So yes, sorry.
First, on the point of the Natural Capital Protocol. I'm very happy to say that Natural Capital Protocol for us is really an inspiring tool, you know, and our inspiring guidelines for developing the tools we need, you know, because as you know, Natural Capital Protocol doesn't include necessarily tools to, if you want, touch down with these needs we have on monetization, for example. But it's really inspiring, and in fact, we had a workshop led by David from EcoAXA on Natural Capital Protocol in one of our desayunos de trabajo, do you remember? And talking and sharing this with the rest of the companies of the group. So we are very happy, and we really congratulate and welcome the Natural Capital Protocol, of course. This is great. And the other question was for me too. So, pledges to the action agenda. Particularly on business and on biodiversity, or at the global agenda, including climate change, for example, and so on?
Well, I think that the interesting thing right now is what pledges can be done for biodiversity, because there's a lot of work already on climate.
Yeah.
So what I'm gonna be a bit rude and use my moderator hat to interrupt, just because Business for Nature and also the CBD's group, the Global Business and Biodiversity Partnership, have a whole load of commitments from companies, and the importance here is to unify them to show that courage to policymakers that businesses are already making commitments and they're already taking action. Any quick point to add to that you wanted to make?
Yes, just that it's not compulsory to make pledges for this kind of initiatives if you are taking part as a partner in the Green Growth Group, but we are very happy to say that many of our companies are doing it and also engaging the alliance and even those alliances we are talking about on biodiversity. So because we understand, and very recently, for example, we've signed up an agreement. I'm looking at ISA now, an agreement with the Biodiversity Foundation for partnering with the whole group with the Spanish initiative Business and Biodiversity too. So by means of this agreement, we hopefully will be much more active, even much more active on pledging for the business and biodiversity.
Thank you so much. Pledges, commitments. Some people are saying there's commitment fatigue, but then having worked with companies directly, they say, do you realize what it actually takes for a company to make a commitment like this publicly? It means that we've been through a number of conversations and discussions strategically, internally, to even make a commitment like that. So I'm going to move over to Slido. There are 9 people who have liked this question. And I would be interested, Alice, in your views. On this one is, what do you think of lining CEO and ExCo members' salaries to biodiversity and climate performance? So the better the impact on nature, the bigger the bonus.
Yes, and then?
Nice.
So what? Yes, I think we already do it. I mean, you have KPIs, and all the CEOs have KPIs, and all our directions have KPIs, and I think maybe more than 15 years ago, one of the KPI was the carbon intensity reduction. And of course, this is a very important tool. And also, it's not only about CEOs, it's about all of us. And in Danone, when I came inside Danone, as a director, in my KPIs, I have also the carbon intensity reduction as an objective. Yes, of course, it makes sense.
Thanks. Thanks, and I'm going to pick out one more question here for you, Anne, which is, you know, we did mention polluter pays, and a bit of a back to basics, to be honest, and someone has picked up on this, if we've known what needs to happen in terms of policies, and we've been talking about a number of these issues for years, whether it's in the science or what needs to happen in policies and solutions. So how are we going to change this, and what is needed today? Would you add anything to that? It's an easy question.
Well,
No.
so it's difficult to explain why all of a sudden an issue takes off and inspires people to action. For biodiversity, it seems that it's our moment, and of course, for those of us who are in the community and have been for a while, we feel like we are repeating this all day for many years, but there are many people for which the issue was new, and we've heard it from the first time, and I think finally there was this sort of a trigger that I think we went through perhaps a bit of a tipping point. It's a bit of an overused way, but now I think we are now at a point where for biodiversity we will not go back down. People are really now starting to think about biodiversity, and what I really think will make a difference is that everyone now asks themselves how they relate to biodiversity, and of course that includes businesses. We are not like with the IPBES reports and with any report that comes out. We cannot give cookbooks for every business, and I think that every business is very able to do it themselves by simply trying to understand what the issues are and how they relate to biodiversity and what can they do. And then they are finding out that there are many, many tools that already exist, and the issue now is to apply it to their own line of work. And many are finding paths, and that's what happens. And there are locomotives now, and others are going to follow. Yeah. And the region, I think, of Europe has a card to play, as they are for climate as well in this story.
Thank you. Thank you so much. I think we're really seeing this convergence, and somehow we've managed the beginning of simplification, although there's more work to be done in terms of what the message is. And certainly the business community is coming together more, in particular under Business for Nature, in terms of the policy asks that businesses around the world, for us all to end up asking the same things of policymakers that is grounded and tested in companies around the world in different sectors. On Tuesday this week, we launched an online consultation of the draft policy asks, and we really hope that you will all contribute to that and share it with your business colleagues to get that input. All right, so we're getting to the coffee break. Please do come back after the coffee break because, listen to this, we're going to hear from actual businesses that are doing really innovative work in trying to embed nature in their decision-making. They're doing it in very different ways. And you know what you're going to be able to do as the audience? Not only hear about them, but then rank which ones you like best. So please come back, the pressure's on, and we're back in here at 11:30. Thank you very much to the speakers too. Thank you. Welcome.